A warm welcome to attendees across the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. My name is Andre, and I'm the CEO of Netcompany. I started the company 20 years ago with the aim of creating solutions to the overall benefit of society and building foundation for all of us to have better lives. And today I'm surrounded by more than 3,000 talented employees with exactly the same ambitions. And I'm delighted to be your host for today. With more than 130 sign-ups for this event, we certainly mark our strong ambition and devotion to support vulnerable children. And to be quite honest, the interest and the wonderful help from both the speakers and the attendees have been overwhelming. Unfortunately, the interest in this field of vulnerable children is spawned from a growing problem in our societies and countries. In EU alone, more than 27 million children need support from authorities. And unfortunately, insufficient help, lack of right organization and overview, and poor systems often fail to support the individual needs when we need to help children, vulnerable children. We know we can do better. We need much more support and real knowledge in helping you in your relentless effort and ambitions to make a difference for these children. So we can certainly do better. Struggling with Corona certainly doesn't make this agenda less critical. Right now, vulnerable children across all our countries feel even more isolated and find it even harder to reach out and get the support and help they need and deserve. The agenda is increasingly building up, also here in Denmark, where I stand at the moment, and where we are known for having one of the best public sectors in the world. Vulnerable children deserve all the support we can give them, not only for themselves, but for the future for all of us. We need to rethink the way we help them. We need to come up with better and more sustainable solutions. And your work is important. Your devotion to support this agenda is very vital for making a difference. And to make your efforts count, we need systems that both align to social regulations and standards, and we need systems designed for much more individual support and care. I have looked very much forward to starting this conversation today and to share experience across nations. Today, we have the opportunity to learn from each other and to support each other in this very societal critical journey. And I'm delighted to present some of the people across the countries represented here today who have worked for years to make the social care systems work better, to find more sustainable and modern solutions that support both the role of social care workers and ultimately shape a brighter future for the children and their families. Today, we'll get views and visions from the UK, where a newly formed task force will set the paradigm for making a difference for millions of children challenged. And we will get a better understanding of how Copenhagen has led the way and implemented a new social care system, being one of the largest municipalities in Denmark. We will hear from Norway how to motivate and govern the effort of making one solution scale across a whole nation, with the ambition to improve social care results ongoingly. And you might ask, why am I standing here today as your host? And to be quite frank, as the CEO of Netcompany, being a host in a conference of this kind is not typically a part of my working day. However, the topic is very important to me. Every day, my team and I fight to make sure that we as societies grasp the potential of digitization and modern solutions to make a difference to people, elderly, families, children, you and I. But besides this urge to make lives better for people, indeed, I grew up in a tough neighborhood myself, with parents being political refugees from Poland, where I was born. Throughout my entire youth in the northern part of Denmark, I grew up with my parents on the wrong side of town. It was a tough neighborhood. Many of my close friends and their families were struggling, and children left too much to themselves, socially disengaged and out of reach for social care. It was a huge challenge for many of my friends in my end of town. And I have seen what it means to be a part of a broken system and how hard it is to get through if systems and authorities fail to give you the support and comfort needed. And I was lucky because I had a lot of love and caring parents. And loving and caring families is indeed priority number one, to ensure that children have that, or at least to ensure that the same foundation can be established by other means, is of huge importance. That is still very much the case today. Let's use this opportunity today to learn from each other. Let's share each other's insights and make it our ambition to ensure a brighter future for the children who deserve support and care. Before giving the word to our first speaker, I want to share some practical information with you. The conference is recorded, and you will receive the link after today's event so you can share it. During the event, you can ask questions. Just fill out the form on the same page as the live broadcast. We'll make sure to address the most popular incoming themes in the panel debate later on at the very end of today's agenda. Last but not least, I would like to introduce the first speaker of today. Josh MacAlister is the chair of the Independent Review of Children's Social Care in England, which launched in January 2021. Josh previously founded the Social Care Charity Frontline in 2013 and has now stepped down from his role as chief executive of Frontline to lead the review. Frontline has brought hundreds of new professionals into social work, secured widespread and cross-party support, and expanded to become a national charity. Since 2013, Frontline has supported over 98,000 children and families. So Josh, very much welcome to you. I'm delighted to have you here, and we're very much looking forward to hear more about that review of yours. Please go ahead, Josh.
Thank you, Andre, and good morning to everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here. This is the 7th day in my new job, so it's very early on in the review. So you'll forgive me for not having any conclusions yet about what our answers are going to be in England. But I wanted to start by just saying a little bit about why in England we're choosing to do a big whole system, whole scale review of children's social care at this time. A brief history is probably helpful. In 1980s, leading up to 1989, we did a major piece of work in England, which was to create the Children Act that set out the contract between the state, families and children. It was a landmark piece of legislation that created really the infrastructure and laws that sit around how the state gets involved in family life in England. And that's lasted since 1989 through to today. It's a piece of legislation that still has widespread support from those who work in children's social care. And it's a very thoughtfully put together, well-considered piece of legislation that stood the test of time. But the world has moved on since 1989. And in fact, in the early noughties, in 2004, there was another fairly major piece of legislation, a change to the way in which the system of children's social care works. And now, almost 20 years on from that, we're asking ourselves the question again: how is it that we can best support children in families to grow up with the foundations that they need? This review hasn't been triggered by serious, high-profile case of abuse or neglect, which is really positive. In England, before, we have sometimes been captured by moral panic of a high-profile case where something's gone wrong, and that has too often been the prism through which we've looked at making changes to children's social care. So that's not the situation with this review, which is really positive. The review is being led by myself, and it's operating independently from government. So what we'll be doing is drawing in lots of external experiences from children and families and young people, parents, kinship carers, foster carers, and also working across government, different departments, across Whitehall, as we describe it in England, and ultimately reporting within 12 to 15 months to both the Secretary of State for Education in the Department for Education, which is the main department overseeing policy in this area, but also to the Prime Minister and to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. The team is supported by a fantastic secretariat, which is still being pulled together at the moment, so we'll be fully up to team at the end of this month. And we've got some crucial groups that are supporting us, one of which is an experts by experience board, which is children, young people, care experienced adults, parents who've had some experience of the child protection system, as well as kinship carers and foster carers. And we'll be drawing in the experiences of professionals in the process too. I guess it's worth saying, you know, why we actually looking at this now. So why is now a new chance to look at some of these questions? And some of the issues that we're facing in England are that we are investigating families more than we have done in recent history. The number of child protection investigations that are opened with parents has risen, as has the number of cases of concern about abuse or exploitation in the community, so outside of the home. Added to that, we've got more children coming into care than we've had in recent history. We've now got 80,000 children who are in care at the moment. And there are sort of ongoing concerns from professionals that the role is becoming increasingly challenging to do. It's increasingly challenging to find the time and space to go out and actually do meaningful work with children and families. The experience for children and young people is often that they don't have the stability in the homes that they're placed in if they are in care, so they end up being moved around too often. And for parents, that the experience of children's services can be often very undignified and stigmatizing. I've lost the slides on my screen. I don't know whether other people have. Okay, there we go. If we go on to the next slide, that'd be useful. Thanks. So the big question, therefore, that we're asking with this review, the essay question, if you like, is how do we ensure that children in England grow up in loving, stable and safe families, and where that is not possible, that care provides the same foundations. Now, we've thought long and hard about the choice of exam question, the choice of this big question that we're asking with the review, and each of these words has weight, it has real meaning. Love is the first one we've chosen. It's often very difficult to define, and there are a range of different definitions of it, and I guess one that I am particularly drawn to is having someone else be responsible for thinking about a child or young person's inner world. Other people, particularly those who work in finance ministries, might find it easier to think about this as strong connection and a tribe, if you like, that is around a young person and a family. It's really hard for the state to provide love. That's provided by families and in communities. And so what's the role that the state can best provide in bolstering those institutions of family and community so that children are more likely to grow up with that love? Stability, we're looking at that in its broadest possible sense. So stability in the relationships that are in these children and young people's lives, as well as very practically, if children end up in a children's home or in a foster home, how do we best ensure that that is for the long term and that it helps build some solid foundations and attachments and connections? And then finally, safety is an important part of our children's social care system, and making sure that children are best kept away from significant harm inside the home, but also increasingly outside of it, where we've got issues in England with county lines and drug running, and also a wider criminal exploitation of young people. And the other word that really matters in all of this, probably the word that I think is most important, is we. How do we ensure that this happens? And that means that this is not just a question for central government or local government. It's a question for all of us as neighbours, friends, families, members of our communities, to do more to step up, to take responsibility for ensuring that children growing up in England have these solid foundations. Go on to the next slide. Thanks. So the scope of the review, the children that we're looking at in the review at the moment starts with a core group of about 750,000 children who at present have access to children's social care in the form of a social worker every year. And over a 6-year period, that equates to about 1 in 10 of all children in England. So it's a minority, but it's a significant minority of children in England who end up needing support with their families to improve those foundations that I've just described. And what we want to do is look at the systems, the interactions they have, not just with social workers, but also with mental health services, youth offending, health in its widest sense, the police and education. And to look at this, which is going to be a new experience for us in England, but to look at this through the experiences of children and families rather than through the institutions or government departments of Whitehall. At the moment, responsibility for a lot of these issues sits across 4 or 5 different government departments, and that inevitably means we start looking at things in boxes, even though it's the same experience that children and young people and their families face. And the ambition for the review is to come up with something which listens really deeply to the experiences that children and families have had over recent years, but comes up with a set of recommendations that are radical and may involve some significant change to the way in which we do children's social care in England. We're also going to be looking at racial disparities as part of this work. It's fairly well documented in England that there are racial disparities throughout the children's social care system, and we want to make sure that we pay particularly close attention to those racial disparities and look at what may need to be done in the future to address those. Go on to the next slide, please. Okay, and so with the review, we'll be bringing together the voices of children, young people, parents, and carers, and those who've been care experienced through a fairly large-scale engagement program. We'll be sharing that in the next few weeks, but it will provide opportunities for everybody who wants to contribute to the review to have their chance to contribute. My hope is that that will give us, in excess of 1,000 opportunities for people to have their say and contribute to the review. Secondly, the system and the wider community of people working with these children and families. We need to find a way of capturing frontline experience of doing this work at the moment, as well as those who are responsible for running the wide-scale systems that deliver this work. And then finally, layering into this research and analysis from the UK and overseas that really tries to bring out what the bedrock evidence is for better supporting children and families in these situations. And then I think the next slide is our final slide. And in, I guess, bringing those 3 areas together, that's where the review will make its recommendations. What we've initially done in the first few months since the review was announced, and as I said at the beginning, this is day 7 for me, so I've only been doing the role for a week and a half. But we initially launched a call for advice, which is really asking people, what is it that I should be asking as the person leading this review? Who should I be speaking to, and what should I be reading? We've launched last week a call for evidence, and we'll probably have a number of calls for evidence over the course of the review. This call for evidence specifically is about asking people to identify gaps in the existing evidence base of how children's social care isn't working, and whether there are any particularly contested notions that research has identified. And then finally, just to finish on, we're getting going with this. I would love to hear more from the experiences of colleagues who are doing this work brilliantly elsewhere in Europe. And so it's a real pleasure to join you here today. Some of my team are on the call as well. And so I look forward to hearing other people's experiences. Please do share them as well with us. We've got a Twitter account for the review, which is @reviewcsc. But you can also email the review with the contact details there. And if you've got any advice or evidence to give us, there are opportunities to share that with us as well. Thank you.
Josh, thank you. I mean, even though it's day number 7, I think you're doing an absolute wonderful job in explaining what it is all about. And this review is of extreme importance. And I like the idea of you coming out and asking, what is the real problems? And I think you touched upon some of them yourselves already, even though it's your day 7. I mean, the fact that 4 or 5 different governmental departments are involved in many of these cases is somehow troublesome if you don't coordinate in between. Like your idea about looking at this through a different type of prism. It's great that we don't have those terrible cases that we had decades ago that was kind of leading to these investigations. However, it's kind of worrying that the number of children being taken into care with other families is coming up. That number is going up. You said something about radical suggestions and trying to identify a completely maybe new way of looking at this. And I know it's very early days and you don't have any answers before the review is over, but can you maybe touch upon where are we going with radical improvements? Is that a question of maybe even reorganizing the whole effort, or where do you think this is leading to?
So I think some of the challenges that we faced with this work is that over years we have identified a problem for a particular group of children and families through a particular public service lens. So, for example, access to mental health services. And what we've done traditionally is we've added a rule or a bit of guidance or a new policy or a new fund. And they have individually served a very good purpose. They've come from good intent. But the overall impact of that on the system in its entirety has been that we've got a very messy and complicated system. So if you're responsible for delivering children's social care in where I am at the moment, which is Cumbria in the north of England, you've got to navigate multiple government departments, many different pockets of funding, a growing list of statutory obligations and requirements. And it means that it sort of takes all of the awareness, the focus of services away from where they need to be, which is on children and families. So I think there is something exciting about the opportunity to look at this whole thing in its entirety and take a step back from it.
Exactly.
I think when it comes to radical solutions, that's the kind of space that you need to be in to think about stuff afresh. And it also leads you into thinking, okay, well, not only what is the role of government in this, but what's the basic contract that we set out for families that need help? So, where life is stressful and things get too much, which can happen to all of us. And I think in COVID, that's something that more people have recognized is a situation they could find themselves in, or their families could find themselves in. The extra pressure of finances being strained, having kids at home and not being able to have them in school, losing some of the wider family connection, all of that stuff weakens and frays the things that strengthen family life. And so when those things happen, and it could happen to any of us, what's the best way that the state can get alongside the family and help? We've not really asked that question in a fundamental way. So I think that opens some doors for radical solutions. And then for children who come into care, we in England have spent a lot of our energy on how we improve the age at which children leave care and their destination. So how they get to university, how they do in school, whether their support when they leave care ends at 18 or whether it ends at 21 or whether it ends at 25. Those are really important questions. But sat underneath that is a more fundamental one, which is how, as a society, have we allowed ourselves to be in a position where children come into care, they get removed from their birth families, and then they enter adulthood without a strong web of loving adults around them. And that's essentially where we are. Too many children, that's what's happening. So I think if our system was built around, everything about it was built around how do we best guarantee safety, stability, and love as the foundations for childhood, I think that takes you into quite exciting in different places.
I am absolutely with you on that one. Great with that holistic approach and looking into the very core of the problem. Okay, Josh, I'm looking very much forward to bring you into the panel debate later. But now I'll leave space for the next speaker. So thank you a lot, Josh. And I will introduce now Ina Corydon, who's the Chief Digital Officer from the Social Department of the City of Copenhagen. And she has a great experience from digitizing various areas of the municipality. Ina knows the challenges, the workflows, and the people's expectations that affect the digital solutions in the municipality. And as she says, digitization is not just about technology itself, it's about the strategy and the people involved. And from the courage of the top management setting the course to view new ways of working, handling key stakeholders, enhancing the employees' IT capabilities, thereby delivering on the promises made. So Ina, we are very much interested in hearing about your project in Copenhagen. Please go ahead. Ina, please, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Andre, for the nice introduction. And I'll just lead you through this. And I'm very happy to be here today. It's such an important addendum. And as you heard, my key takeaways actually, well, leadership today is also about digital leadership. And it's a new capability. And how do you go about that? Next slide, please. So one of my key quotes is actually this one: people are the real key to digital transformation. So it's not about digitization itself, it's about the how. How do we go about things? Please, next slide. Some facts. Yes, the city of Copenhagen is actually the capital of Denmark, but it's also the largest municipality in Denmark, representing more than 10% of the population. And on top of that, we're actually also the largest workplace in Denmark. The social service department, well, we have more than 7,000 employees. We have a budget of 6 billion kroners, equivalent of 800 million euros. And we are actually handling vulnerable adults, children, and disabled children and adults as well. So it's a huge, complex area. And I think what I just heard just talking about before, family is at the center here. When we look into our Center for Vulnerable Children, it's more than 2,000 employees. And just a quick glance through what we're doing: 10 permanent housing accommodation for children, 10 family centers, 10 prophylactic centers, 10 social psychiatry centers, 10 centers for crime-prone youngsters, and more than 500 foster care families. More than 6,000 new cases every year, and at the moment, about 1,200 children that are permanently removed from home. So I really agree. How do we go about handling their way into adulthood? That's very essential for us. We have encountered several challenges along the road for the last couple of years, and I just highlighted some of the years that, in hindsight, we can see actually were our windows of opportunity. When we look back into 2013, we had some really, really horrific cases concerning vulnerable children across Denmark. And this meant a huge governmental focus on new laws. So we got a total new legislation around kids. And actually, since then, we've seen a really 25% increase in the alerts that we're having as an authority in our municipalities. So in 2016, our legal chancellor in the city of Copenhagen went through 100 of our cases on children to see if we really were abiding this new law, if we had the right quality in our cases. And it turned out that 98 of the 100 cases, there were major errors in those. So this really shifted strategy within our department in the cities, in the center for the kids, to the leadership really going into see how can we really get the right overview and really having taken the right steps when we look into the cases concerning the children. So every third month they started a major scheme, taking out more than 200 cases, going through them to see if they were working if the caseworkers were actually going through the right steps. And this meant a huge need for more caseworkers, but also the need for a better solution. How could we really support the caseworkers on their everyday work? And on top of that, in 2017, it turned out that we also I think this is a worldwide problem, but in Denmark, we could see a 25% increase in the diagnosis for children, especially on the ADHD diagnosis, again, leading to more caseworkers, etc., and more unfortunate cases. So we started in 2018 saying, okay, we have to get a new solution, having a shared solution across the whole department, and went into a classic EU tender, making this requirement specification, but tried out something new. We actually then involved more than 140 people across our organization, professionals with deep insight in the working processes that are needed to address this area. And then we went into an EU tender in 2019. Late 19, we then had a complaint and had to stop the EU tender. At the same time, we actually looked into, could see that on the national level, DUBO, a joint shared municipality solution, actually used by 72 municipalities, were on the right track, and would like, okay, let's look into our requirement. And it turned out that just the authority area for the children's area, it was more than 40% of our requirement due to this very, very complex legislation. So we went along signing up for the national solution instead of going into our own bit to really have the standardized way of working then. And in 2020, last year, we started implementing, and actually on the 2nd of March, we started implementing DUBO. And then, of course, 11th of March, we were sent home, everybody. So the COVID-19 situation actually also turned out to be a major shift in working digital. And let's just say our leaders were phenomenal. They went in to say, okay, how can we use Signal to save texting, using FaceTime, everything that normally we do when we have also physical meetings with parents, with kids, the outgoing employees. How could we use the tools we had, using Teams, using emergency calls, etc. It was really a major way of seeing digitization as a tool to shift to other ways of working. And right now we are in 21, we're looking into the data area, experimenting with the machine learning to see if we can do something about all the alerts we have. We have more than 16,000 alerts on children that we're obliged to answer within 24 hours. So could we see any other knowledge to get out of that to really handle the most important cases firsthand? Next slide, please. So if we could look into this is a digital model of what we're doing, the services. So on the top left hand, we have the authority on children, where we now have DUBO. And then we have the other areas, also the adults, and we have the children on the outgoing and service performance what we have, and the adults as well. So these 4 squares make up actually what we do to our citizens and to our employees. And it turned out now we have actually 2 solutions. One for the DUBO for the children, but it's not on an isolated platform, because we're very lucky in Denmark. We actually have a shared framework for IT architecture within the municipalities. And we use that to say, okay, we need to have data flowing across areas. We have to still be able to look into families, how they are doing, because we know that when we have the vulnerable children, we often, very sadly, also have adults that are vulnerable. So having this shared information across our department is key. So standardization and the joint architecture is the key to really still have this overview. On a national level, we also are very lucky having a a shared case working system. So on a city level, that's SAPA in the bottom line. The other departments in the city of Copenhagen can look at the cases that we are having. They cannot see documents, you cannot see the all the confidential GDPR stuff, but you're able to see that this family has a case, and perhaps we just have to follow up with this department, what is going on with this family. Next slide, please. So the changes we really had to focus on in our project was at leadership from top to bottom. That was crucial for us. And could you just make a next? I think that something will drop down. Not next slide, but okay. You should be able to see something going down. No, okay, not next slide. Could we go back? Yes. So on the top, we had the best role models. Actually, our current CEO, he was the chairman of the steering group. So, and to the bottom, local leaders were empowered to say, how are we going to work with Dubu? We had a blended learning focusing on our employees, 5 days of targeted learning. And this was essential. So we just didn't think of this solution was the answer, but it was all around it. It was also the new methods within Dubu that it's integrated. So the professionalism around and the insight that our workers have, this was key. So this means that we now have better data. We are able to look into politics. We're looking into the new ways of working in a standardized way. So many, many new things. So the key takeaways, next slide, please. Never let a good crisis go to waste. I think that was Churchill saying this. Timing is everything. A national complex agenda is best solved as a joint effort, a shared solution. Don't ever underestimate the nature of the specific changes involved. Involve the professionals as early as possible and respect their insights. Keep focused on the right things. No child is forgotten was one of our mottos. When we restarted all the cases, we really had so many controls, securing that every case was lifted from our old system to Dubu. And actually, implementation never ends. And you have to look as IT architecture as Lego. Does it fit together with everything else you need to know in cases of the children? So this is a very short story from my everyday life, but I think it's very important that the steps we've taken, and we can see so many benefits by this. And thank you for listening.
Hey, thank you so much for sharing that. That's really, really interesting. And I noticed there was like two really, really core interesting things about putting this system into place. One was the legislation itself. I mean, following the legislation and being able to follow that very tediously, you needed a system. And the other thing which I found was very interesting was the fact that you're actually looking at a more centralized system now, where you have all the alerts coming in, and maybe sooner when you need to act, and maybe what works and what does not work. I guess that's one of the most important things about this, because we're trying to do a lot of things at the same time. As we heard Josh say before, different governmental departments are involved. But with this type of digitization, you can actually get into the core of the problem and find out maybe earlier what's going on. Is that correct, or is that one of the visions of this? Or
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And I think our strategy with the family first approach is also what this is about. As Josh, I think he said it was, you really need to have the right knowledge at the right time. And this is when you're handling vulnerable children, this is really key.
Yeah.
And looking into, so you depend on the system. You need to be sure when you look into the system, you have the right information. It's valid, so that you can act. And having this overview, this is key. And again, I think the next level here, we've just finished for a couple of months ago implementing Dubu. And the data we have to look into now is, can we see any patterns? Can we see something that we couldn't see before? I think that's the next thing we're looking into.
Extremely interesting. Thank you a lot. Thanks a lot. We will come back to more about this implementation in the panel debate. Now we have a 5 minutes break because we know, as you sitting behind the screens for a whole day, it is tiresome. So please use this opportunity to get a cup of tea or coffee, and we see you back here at 11:15. Thanks a lot.
How do we transform social care systems for children to support them in realizing their full potential? DUBU is a children's social care system based on the International Integrated Children's System (ICS) standard. The solution was specified by the Danish Ministry of Interior and the Danish municipalities. In close dialogue with social care users, the second-generation social care system DUBU is designed for complex case management in ministries and public organizations, with a strong focus on the child in need. In Denmark, DUBU is a central tool for more than 4,000 social workers who help bring a brighter future to vulnerable children and young people in 75 of the 98 Danish municipalities. With DUBU, social workers have access to a modern case management platform that is reliable, highly intuitive, and user-friendly, while conforming to the regulations of the National Board of Social Services in Denmark and compliant with requirements for handling sensitive personal data. The platform can personalize to the needs of the individual caseworker, and it ensures efficient workflow by guiding the user through a case, always displaying upcoming tasks, deadlines, and unresolved issues. This allows for less time actually spent on administrative work, resulting in more time available for the child. From beginning to end, the social worker never has to consult other systems than DUBU. In December 2020, the platform was also chosen by the Norwegian Child Care Authority and is being rolled out to 8 of the largest municipalities in Norway, to give them the future they deserve. How do we transform social care systems for children to support them in realizing their full potential? DUBU is a children's social care system based on the International Integrated Children's System (ICS) standard. The solution was specified by the Danish Ministry of Interior and the Danish municipalities. In close dialogue with social care users, the second-generation social care system DUBU is designed for complex case management in ministries and public organizations, with a strong focus on the child in need. In Denmark, DUBU is a central tool for more than 4,000 social workers who help bring a brighter future to vulnerable children and young people in 75 of the 98 Danish municipalities. With DUBU, social workers have access to a modern case management platform that is reliable, highly intuitive, and user-friendly, while conforming to the regulations of the National Board of Social Services in Denmark and compliant with requirements for handling sensitive personal data. The platform can personalize to the needs of the individual caseworker, and it ensures efficient workflow by guiding the user through a case, always displaying upcoming tasks, deadlines, and unresolved issues. This allows for less time actually spent on administrative work, resulting in more time available for the child. From beginning to end, the social worker never has to consult other systems than DUBU. In December 2020, the platform was also chosen by the Norwegian Child Care Authority and is being rolled out to 8 of the largest municipalities in Norway, to give them the future they deserve. How do we transform social care systems for children to support them in realizing their full potential? DUBU is a children's social care system based on the International Integrated Children's System (ICS) standard. The solution was specified by the Danish Ministry of Interior and the Danish municipalities. In close dialogue with social care users, The second-generation social care system, DuBu, is designed for complex case management in ministries and public organizations, with a strong focus on the child in need.
And welcome back. I hope you had the chance to just get a cup of coffee or tea and a break here. Now we've got a very exciting last speakers here from Norway. We've got Tommy Engvik, who's the project manager at the DigiBarnevern project in Trondheim municipality, together with Frode Løbesli, who's the project leader on the government project there. The DigiBarnevern is a national initiative with the goal of meeting the challenges in the municipality child welfare services. And the initiative will increase the quality of the child welfare services across Norway and ensure faster and better help for children in need. So, guys, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're hearing me well. Great. We have got 20 minutes on this. I'll take the first 10 minutes or so. You can just go to the next slide. So when we looked at the challenges of the municipal child welfare services, we saw a lot of challenges across the different people involved. First, the children, the youth, parents. They don't have information concerning their own cases. They want to be more involved. Nowadays, that means digital participation, and we want to give them that level of participation that they want and that they have the right to. Also, we saw that the employees, the systems that they worked in, didn't really help them do their jobs, rather the opposite. We saw leaders in the child welfare system in the municipalities use a lot of time cleaning up, reporting. They didn't get the help they needed. And also, the child welfare services in the municipalities are in contact with so many others in the municipality, in the state, public, private. We needed that digital communication to work better. So there were a lot of challenges that we found when we first went into this in the concept phase back in the day. So you can just take the next slide. So Barnevern, that means Child Protective Services or Child Welfare Services. And this is a national initiative. It's split into two components. The one component, where I'm a project leader, is financed by the largest municipalities in Norway. Also has the support of an organization that's owned by all the municipalities called KS. There's always also a government component. And this is initiative that's been through first a concept phase, where we looked at what the issues were, what kind of solutions we could create or buy to meet those issues, and also which part of the government should be in charge of creating those deliveries, the municipalities or the government. Now we're in an implementation phase, and we'll talk a bit about the different parts that make up DigiBarnevern. So you can go to the next slide. I have an overview here. There's a lot of bubbles that will come up. Hopefully my assistant here will help me along. Thank you. You can stop now. Just go back one. So in DigiBarnevern, there are 6 large deliveries, and together we hope that they will be able to lift the child welfare services for all the municipalities in Norway. The first one is a national portal for reporting concerns. A lot of these cases start with concern from a private party or someone employed in the public sector. It was really hard to do. Had to call, had to send in some kind of letter, get some stamps, and this is a service that's now online working in Norway, and Frode will talk more about it later. So next, please. Just go like 3 or 4 more. So thank you. You can stop now. In Norway, there isn't one organization that can tell the municipalities which systems to use. So the strategy for this project or this initiative is for the municipalities that are involved in this initiative to make sure that there were at least one new system in the market, and then other suppliers may create other competing systems, and then the other municipalities in Norway can choose between these X number of systems. So this IT system, this administrative information system, in this case in Norway, it's Netcompany who won the tender for these 8 municipalities, and we'll create a system that will then compete in the market for the other municipalities. And we wanted to give the employees, the leaders, good tools to help them do their job, whether it's on their laptops, whether they're on the field, on tablets or phones, something that really helps them. All right, so you can go like 3 more. So digital services or digital services for the citizens is one of the other deliveries in DigiBarnevern, and these services will allow parents, children, young people a digital platform to communicate with the child welfare services, to give them the opportunities to be involved in their own case. And this delivery, as well as the portal, as well as all the deliveries except for the one in the middle here, are national components. There's only one of them, and the government makes them and then afterwards takes care of them. So this will be the way that the children, the youth, the parents interact with the child welfare services. And this is, of course, very needs-driven service design, trying to actually create something that will be useful for them. All right, like go 4 more. Reporting is a large thing in the child welfare system. So all the different IT systems will be reporting to a new national child welfare register that will help the leaders in the municipalities, that is the directorate, which is Norwegian in Norway called Bufdir, and all others understand and improve the welfare services. So these are the 4 major kind of technological systems or services that will be implemented in the next couple of years. The portal that often starts the process, where we can give people help to send in their concern in a quick way. In the middle, we have the new IT systems, where Netcompany's system will be one of the systems in the market. We have the digital services for the children that will, of course, be integrated with all the different systems in the market. So that, for instance, if you move to a new county, it's still the same kind of services that you see. And of course, the National Child Welfare Register, which receives reporting from all the systems in the market. But these are all digital. We also have some more things that makes this even more improving of quality and even better. So if you go 1 more, 2 more. The directorate is working on a child welfare professional quality system, which Frode will talk a bit more about. But this is that's not an IT system. It's a system in the abstract. It's something that sets the framework for what is quality in the child welfare system or the child welfare area, and helps employees think about what they're doing, and also more concrete questions, guidelines for the work they're doing. And the idea is that this professional quality system will then be implemented in all the IT systems in the market. Of course, Netcompany's system, Modulus Barn, and also the other systems. And just to round it out, you can go 2 more, 3 more. We have some information architecture as well, which is often neglected Bifty is working on terms or the definition of different kinds of words, so that we use the same definition. We have a common information model, and also that we have standard interchange formats between the portal and the information systems in the middle, and also the information systems. The reporting to the child welfare registers is in the same way. So now Frode will go over the 4 deliveries that the government or the state is in charge of. So I'll give the word to him. All right, thanks.
Thank you very much, Tommy, and thank you very much for allowing me to present DigiBarnevern today. My name is Frode Løbertli. I am the project manager for the governmental part of DigiBarnevern. I'm working for the Norwegian Directorate for Children, Youth and Family Affairs, as also called Bifty. As Tommy has told, the governmental project has 4 main deliveries, and this is the 4th one that is in last in this figure. I will give a short presentation of this deliveries that Thomas has just put in context for all the DigiBarnevern. The first delivery I will talk about is the National Portal for Reporting Concern. The service was launched in April last year. It is a website where private citizens and public sector employees can submit reports of concern to the child welfare services. The goal is to ensure that the reports are sent quickly and safely to the right child welfare service. Next slide, please. Here are some screenshots of the service. As you can see, it is a service where users can log in with their own electronic ID. Once logged into the service, it will guide the users to write an informative concern report. The report will be sent to the child welfare service in the child's municipality. In Norway, it is the municipalities that have the legal authority to receive reports of concerns. The report of concerns will be received directly in the Child Welfare Service information system. Today, they will, before this portal, they have to take care of the physical letters of concerns. But now it will be put, we will get it in their information system. The project has also developed an API that can be implemented in other public actors' information system, for example, within the police or information systems in the healthcare sector. The portal has 2 major benefits. Firstly, there are huge time savings since you do not have to send the report by ordinary letter mail. Secondly, the quality of the message has improved due to the guidance given in the portal. At the end, this will of course ultimately help the child because things will be safer and faster into the systems. So next slide, please. The second delivery from the government project is the Child Welfare Professional Quality System. Here the goal is to contribute to a higher quality in municipal child welfare service. The quality system is a professional framework for supporting employees in municipal child welfare service. It focuses on contributing to a more equitable and quality-assured performance of professional practice across Norway. The framework will help the social care workers in their daily work and can be implemented in various child welfare information systems. The goal is that all vendors, including Netcompany, implement the quality system into their information system. Then the quality system will give the social care workers professional and legal quality support to their assessments, decisions, and how they document their decisions. The quality system is being published in the form of different professional and legal components. The quality system has its own information model, and the components are made accessible digitally as a data sets according to the model. The information model and the data sets can be used by the vendors in their information systems, helping the employees to improve their quality. Next slide, please. Here are some illustration or prototypes of how the quality system might look like when integrated into the child welfare information system. The unique thing about our solution is that we have chosen to publish the quality system as data sets based on an information model. This gives the vendors, for instance, Netcompany, freedom to decide how the quality reports should be present for their users, at the same time as the dataset will continually be updated with new knowledge and components by the Directorate of Child, Youth and Family Affairs, BUFDID. So this is the quality system. So next slide, please. The third delivery is the Terms and National Child Welfare Register. The goal is to provide better data on children and child welfare service than is currently available in Norway. And it's also to simplify and streamline the collection of data for reporting and management in the government and the municipalities. We need more knowledge of the child welfare system, and with this project we will collect the necessary data. So next slide, please. In Norway, we have 356 municipalities that spend a large resources on reporting today. The project will simplify and automate the reporting from the municipalities. Today, the municipalities have different reports to different public actors. The goal is that we will merge and automate these reports, thus reducing costs considerable and freeing time for more working with children. Okay, next slide. The last delivers the information model and reporting formats. The goal here is to facilitate the digitalization of the municipal child welfare service. This is done by making contents of the quality system readily accessible and machine readable, and by defining the contents and formats of reports for easier digital communication between systems and services. The service consists of making datasets available with content related to the quality system and the logical information models. In addition, the service consists of reporting formats that describes the technical specifications needed for exchanges between systems. For example, the format for exchanging information from the national portal for reports of concern to municipal child welfare information systems. The service will be available in machine-readable formats with associated documentation via the service we call data.bufdi.no. Next slide, please. The screenshot shows the service. In this service, we communicate with system vendors about our datasets and the technical specifications. Our vision is for for system vendors to create innovation around our data sets. Instead of what might be a other way of publishing our quality system in a fancy brochure, we have chosen to distribute it as data sets that the vendors can integrate into their information system. In this way, we want the vendors to make innovation around our data sets. And the ultimate the goal is at the end that children and family that need help should get the help that works for them at the right time. They should experience a cooperative child welfare service that offers real opportunities for involvement, and the legal rights should be strengthened. DigiBarnevern also aims to increase the level of trust in the child welfare services, helping them to be perceived as a safe for children and providing equitable services. So thank you for my presentation. Next slide for context information.
Going into a bit more detail about how it was all built up. But I think maybe one of the most interesting things here is, as I understand it, and forgive me if I am not into all the details, but if I understand it correctly, before all this, that was a local effort primarily in terms of helping vulnerable children. And then gradually, that's how I hear this, and please correct me if I'm wrong, gradually what you're enforcing in Norway right now is actually kind of a framework that each municipality can follow, combined with a centralized follow-up and data gathering mechanism. So if I understand this correctly, each municipality can tap into this framework, and the municipalities can then gather information in this more centralized manner when they've been tapped into the framework. Is that correctly understood? It's kind of an evolution where you're moving up the IT support of this important work in the local municipalities.
I can try answering that. Well, it's true that before, each of the municipalities didn't have much in terms of support or IT systems. They basically had maybe one information system with a couple of vendors in the market. What we're doing now is trying to look at this holistically and see, and what we did back in the concept phase was think about what kind of services, systems, frameworks do the municipalities need to provide good services. And then what came out of it was portal for reporting concern. That's a national portal that everyone can use. Digital services that the government owns and that works with all the municipalities and information systems. Also, more of the quality system that works for the municipalities that helps all of them, which also is integrated in the information system, and also a common reporting system. So it's kind of a large-scale digitalization that we provide for or help all the municipalities. So kind of the only thing that each municipality needs to do is to acquire or buy an information system. But when they have that, the entire architecture or ecosystem around that works, so they can receive reports of concern from the national portal. They can use the child digital services. They can report to the national register, and they can also use the professional quality system that's coming out of the directorate.
That's really, really interesting. So it's actually up to the individual municipality to click into this model, but when they do, they have all these things ready for them.
Yeah, it's because of the system in Norway. The municipalities are they decide for themselves in a lot of ways. We don't have a governmental, or the state can't decide for them, but we're trying to help them do the right thing here to create that many services and frameworks that they can that they can use.
Yeah, and people move. They move from one municipality
Exactly.
to the other, right? And the
Yeah.
problem is still there. I think
Yeah.
this is a very important theme, and you guys are doing an impressive job in trying to create that common technical framework for the entire nation. I think we should bring in the other speakers now, because a lot of the questions that came out during your presentations, and that goes for actually for all three of you, is around this theme about decentralizing, centralizing, and I think a lot of questions come to you, Ina, about, because you said yourself that when you started this work for Copenhagen Municipality, you realized pretty soon that instead of just making it for the biggest municipality in Denmark, you had the courage to say, well, guys, maybe we need to look at this in a broader perspective, and then use that as an entrance for the other municipalities to come in. Where did you get that courage from? I mean, that idea, how easy was it to announce that idea because that's exactly what I hear the Norwegians actually are doing as well. You're not forcing anyone to do anything, but you're showing an example, and then hopefully, more municipalities gather in. Could you dwell more upon how that actually happened in Denmark?
Yes, definitely. I think it's a very good question. And I think perhaps the way Denmark, is also the leader in public digitization. So I think there's a maturity here that we've been working with for some years. And actually, the city of Copenhagen has been, you could say, very self-centered for the last 20 years, doing stuff on its own because we were able to do that. And suddenly seeing this as, why do you want to make up your own solutions instead of taking this as representing 10% of the national people in Denmark, actually saying, okay, we have the muscles perhaps to bring our knowledge to the greater good. And I think this was a shift a couple of years ago, and recently our new CEO also has put this to the agenda, the joint agenda for the social department, saying we have to be this big brother, taking responsibility, sharing our knowledge, doing something for the greater good. So I think it's a maturity travel we've been on, and very, very from some years. But I think to the point of it, something that serious you cannot do alone. You have to have a national view on this.
But traditionally, one has to say, I mean, and also from the things that you mentioned in your presentation, Josh, traditionally, politically, this has been only interesting when you had these severe cases, and then you try to do some legislation. I think in all three countries, we've seen a numerous amount of legislation coming out throughout the decades, and all with good intention, of course. But what I'm hearing also you're saying right now is we actually need to centralize some of the effort, even though the putting the family into the center of everything is a decentralized approach, of course, to that particular family and that particular child. The overall effort needs to be coordinated and centralized in order to use the resources we have correctly. And Josh, is that something that you think? No, I know you haven't done your review yet, but with your radical, I mean, in the UK, how is the effort right now structured very locally? I guess. I mean, it is just like the case as in it was in Norway, and still is. It's still the municipalities doing most of the work, right? And then coordinating throughout these governmental departments. I mean, one of those radical ideas would that be to centralize through IT, or what do you think? I think you're muted, Josh. I do that all the time too. Even though you're on this thing every day, you do it all the time. I do it too. Can we hear Josh? Is he coming through? There's no sound from you, Josh. Okay, we get the technical guys work on that, and then let's jump back to this theme, because most of the questions are about this. I mean, here it's described as maybe this is a gentle way of transforming the local support and effort into a more intelligent one without forcing anyone to do anything in particular, but just gently giving services that can be used across municipalities. Is that what you guys are doing in Norway? And is that exactly what is happening in Denmark as well? And then if Josh has the sound, he can come back to, we'll come back to you, Josh.
Well, I can try to say something about that. Yeah, I mean, in Scandinavia, local democracy has always been a large part of the system here. The municipalities are responsible for their own services, and therefore the IT systems and everything else to support those services. So there are different systems. In Denmark, you have Kumbit, which is a large company owned by the counties or the municipalities that they can do a lot of things. In Norway, we don't have that. So in this case, we had to try and work within the system that we have and create services that we think the municipalities want to use. Maybe in the future, Norway will change. I mean, IT is often the great centralizer. Maybe there will be a large company owned by the municipalities as in Denmark. But right now, I think the strategy needs to be think about what the municipalities would want. I can hear you, Josh. But
great. Okay, cool. I'm not going to put my headphones in.
Just to finish, I don't know if you other people heard that, but we need to think about that the municipalities decide for themselves and then create services, frameworks, and really work with, in Norway, 358 municipalities. It's a lot of work getting them to use these services.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's 358, and they're also geographically very spread apart, right? I think, Josh, you have. I mean, your country is like from here to Rome, I guess. So it's pretty long. So I guess there's a lot of local stuff that needs to be taken care of as well, and you need to respect the local efforts combined with the intelligence you can subscribe to centrally. I think there must be some sort of a balance that needs to be kept all the time. In all countries. But Josh, I mean, in the UK, I think we've got your back now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're in.
Okay, great.
I mean, just by curiosity, UK. I mean, you got 66 million people there. It's just the amount of people is higher, and you got huge cities. So you got you got big cities, which in fact, I mean, the efforts in those cities is primarily probably driven by those councils and those departments in that city. Do you have? I mean, is there any types of? Do you think about this as a more centralized approach in the future? And is it actually practically done with in a big country like that, with so many politicians having an opinion locally?
Yeah. So I think this is a really good question, and it's definitely something we'll be giving a lot of thought to. There is a dilemma, which is that we've got at the moment we've got 152 different children's social care systems in England delivered through local government. In a country, as you say, that's got just over 55 million people in England, and there is a dilemma because on some issues the problem is that we're too statist, we're too paternalistic, and actually communities want to find ways of developing responses themselves that feel as though it's communities and neighborhoods helping families raise their kids successfully together without too much state involvement. And so you've got a dilemma at one end of the spectrum, which is, if anything, we're actually maybe we're already too centralized on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
At the other end of the spectrum, you've got the rates of children coming into care massively varied across those 152 local authority areas, and in some cases the variation is so great that it leaves you thinking that actually there's some issue of basic justice here for families and children about separation that may lead you to say we need more consistency. So part of the challenge that we've got, and I think this is fairly typical perhaps for other countries, is that on some issues we actually need more decentralization, more devolution of resources and power to communities, and on some other issues we actually need perhaps maybe a bit more centralization. So there is a dilemma in there somewhere on that. And, just on the question about IT systems, we did have an experiment in creating a national IT system in the 2000s, and it was a complete disaster. It cost, many, many millions of pounds. It was very badly managed. And I think a lot of the people that work in the system who will remember that, but feel like their fingers have been burnt. So any sort of national IT system in England comes with a slight shudder down the spine. So we need to be very careful with any recommendations about that.
Yeah, but I think that goes for all the countries, and that's why you need to do this evolutionary approach that I'm hearing. It needs to come from the bottom and up. It needs to be the choice and the real work every day of concrete examples, and using the local system that then plugs into a more centralized data sharing platform in order to get all these alerts and provide some services that the local municipality cannot do by itself. We've got several questions here about why are we here? Apparently 20% increase in children being put into care is like a systematic evolution. It's a development in all countries, right? And it seems like, and you said yourself, more children do have symptoms of HD. You have these things going on. It's in numbers. You just see an increase, and it's not COVID-19 alone. It's something to do. So I think there's a lot of questions about, why do you think that is? I'm not sure you guys can answer that. But the second question is will, and you said it yourself, Ina, and I think will pattern recognition and more insight to what is really going on help us in order to diagnose and what is happening out there, and how can we, and what works and what does not. So that it's a twofold question. Why do you think it's going on? And secondly, do you think data and insight can help us in doing the right things? And please go ahead, Ina. I think you have some remark here.
Yes, I think data is really something we need to look into, and we had our old system, legacy systems, couldn't provide with that kind of insight. And actually, we have this AI agenda in our municipality, and also a set of conduct a code of conduct, starting off with things that are really not, you could say, making headlines, but securing some insight. And for instance, we have now more than 16,000 of these concerns yearly in Copenhagen. And within 24 hours, we have to respond on that concern alert. And also afterwards, giving that data into 29 categories to our statistics, the Danish Statistics Agency. And when we looked into this, we said, okay, could we just try to make a kind of what are the most major incidents? So where we really, a child is being abused, heavily, violence, etc. We have to, within the first hour, take that one from the top. Instead of starting from the mailing list when we're getting it from the bottom of it, we have to start with the most important cases, alerts first. And we made this, and it's working, and we see many benefits in this. And suddenly it turns out that actually when we were handling the system back to the Danish Statistics Agencies, the 29 categories, we could see that the caseworkers couldn't make that right. They were falsely putting the categories on this concern. And now the algorithm is able to have 90% correct categorization. And suddenly, we say, okay, could this lead to something else? Should we afterwards look into other areas? So having the architecture in Denmark, as I told you before, we have this framework. The municipalities have a joint IT architecture. And this is providing us suddenly with some data also across in the DuBo system that 72 other municipalities use, we could see, are there any things that we should look more into? So I think this is the next level. So from getting into a joint solution, a standardized ways of working, securing that the caseworkers have what they need in their daily work. The next thing is, could we draw something very important knowledge out of that to really go in further helping the children? I think that's what it's all about.
That's extremely interesting, and unfortunately, we are about to run out of time. If this was a different format, I guess we would just go outside and have a break, and maybe even have some lunch, and all the attendees could mingle in between each other from the 3 different countries, and we could talk, I think, all day about this. But unfortunately, we're running out of time. I just have to say, it's been extremely interesting to hear from all 3 countries and what you guys are doing. There's a lot of similarities here, and I think the problems are basically the same. And we're striving the best we can to find the solutions. One thing we can do, though, in this format, and it is actually happening right now, a lot of questions are being asked and a lot of connections are being established between people. So don't hesitate to write to us, and I'm sure that both Ina and Josh and Tommy and Frode would love to answer some of the questions, and maybe we could even create some follow-up on this, because it's been absolutely interesting. And guys, thank you so much for participating and your great speeches here and your presentations. That's been really, really interesting. So by that, I have to close it down. Enjoy the rest of the day, and thank you so much, and see you next time around. Thanks a lot.